In the late 1950s, Samuel R. Slaymaker created the first of what he called his juvenile trout imitations. And the first one he came up with was called the Little Brown Trout. A couple years later, he came up with the Brook Trout and then the Rainbow Trout version. Now, Sam Slaymaker was not your typical fly fishing and tying author. He was born into wealth, kind of the Pennsylvania royalty in Lancaster in 1923. His great-great-great-grandfather was Judge Henry Slaymaker, one of the elites of the social class in the 1700s. And his grandfather was Sam Slaymaker Sr., who founded the Slaymaker Lock Company in 1888. And he owned one of the most prominent houses at the time, was a place called White Chimneys, which he later willed to Sam Slaymaker II in the mid-1900s. And this is the Sam Slaymaker we're talking about. He was a veteran of the Army Air Corps, served in World War II. After that, he got out and helped run the company's lock business until he sold it in 1975 so he could become a full-time author. And he did publish several books, a couple of them which were about fly fishing. So of course he talks about these successful bucktails that he created in the book, but by then they were already really popular flies. Joseph Bates talked about them in one of the earliest streamer and bucktail books that he wrote. And the Weber Tackle Company sold them as part of their Select 7 streamers in 1960. And we still tie them and fish them today. In fact, my personal best brook trout came on the one I'm about to tie right now. And it was one I caught in the Mount Rogers Recreation Area, Southwest Virginia. I believe it was in the spring of 2018. But these are some really cool bucktails. Definitely colorful. I think you're going to like this one. Let's give it a shot. So there we go in the vise. Sam Slaymaker's Little Brook Trout. A very nifty pattern, and there's quite a bit going on, but it's not a terribly hard or long tie. Now, the original pattern does call for the Mustad 3665, which is a 3 extra heavy, 7 extra long hook. It's a pretty beefy hook, but I only had this in a size 4, and I don't want to tie this thing as big as a 4. So I'm using a generic size 8 hook. It is a 7 extra long, but I think this is about what I would fish right here. Now this is not a 3 extra heavy, but we'll get by with it just fine. So black thread, and I'm just going to catch it in toward the back right here, somewhere down here near the point of the hook. And the first thing I'm going to catch in, some green bucktail for the tail. And it's not an insignificant tail, and it's kind of long, a little bit longer I'd say than a hook gap. So let's catch it in back here with a pinch wrap and a couple of tight wraps going back. Okay, I think that's going to look fine right there. And I'm going to leave this, just pull my thread out, take some loose wraps going up, let this be part of my underbody. Okay, now let's snip this off right here, then we'll take our thread back to the back again. And the next thing, it's a little bit of red. This is just a red floss. I think this was kind of a 4 strand. And I'm gonna catch it in, not quite as long as that green, but you know, gives you a nice little hint of a red tail here. So let's catch this in right back here. And you can fluff that out if you want, or just not worry about it. I'm gonna go ahead and snip this off, because it's not gonna create a lump right there. Let's try to trim these little scragglies right here that I missed. And I need to take my thread back up the front before I catch in the rib. Now the rib on this calls for a Largatun, you know, this flat kind of tinsel right here with the little crinkles in it, but in a silver. And I only had this in a gold, so I had to make a decision. Do I want to just go with something different that's in a silver, or go with that Largatun? And I decided to go with this silver oval tinsel. So it's not going to be 100% like the original, but that's okay. I think it was more important to have the color, have the silver, than have the flat tinsel. So let's go ahead and catch this in up front and take it all the way to the back. Now for the bulk of the body, it's a cream. It just calls for a cream, and this is a synthetic yarn. It's kind of fuzzy. It was a 3-strand yarn, and I split it up. I'm going to use 2 of the strands. I tried one before with just one of the strands, and I think it was just a little bit too thin of a body, but your preference, whatever you like. try it either way and see what you like. I think 2 strands ended up looking pretty good, so let's catch this in all the way to the back right here. Now just wrap this up, touch and turns. You can spin it clockwise if you want to cord it up a little bit, or just, you know, let it lay on here naturally and give you kind of a little fuzzy look, which I think looks pretty good. So I definitely got a little bit of fuzziness right there, but you know what? I like that. So let's go ahead and wrap this rib. And this 7 extra long hook, you can probably get a good 6 or 7 wraps here, but really just whatever's your preference. Now we do have a throat on this, and Mike Valla in his Bucktails book, he went with the original and used an orange bucktail for this. I'm not going to, because it's just really hard to get enough of it without it looking too scraggly. This is orange, just hackle feathers, and I think it's going to look just fine right there. It just gives you that little hint of orange. So let's go ahead and snip this excess off right here, and a couple extra wraps right here to flatten this out. But you do want to be pretty economical with your thread wraps, because we're tying in 4 different components for this wing. So I'm going to have to take my thread back just a little bit before I tie in the first one, which is just a small little patch of white bucktail. So not a whole lot, and actually this right here, that's probably more than I want. So I'm going to grab it by the tips and then just try to pull a little bit more out of it, thin it out just a little bit, and kind of long, you know, out there past the bend of the hook. And I'm going to catch it in, well, with a pinch wrap at first, and then maybe 2 wraps right here, and it might flare up on you. That's going to be fine. We'll take care of that in a second. Again, not too many thread wraps to catch this in, just enough to keep it where you want on the hook. Because too many, and you know, we'll build up a much bigger head than we really want. And the next color, just a little bit of orange. And I'm actually going to do the orange and green, which are the next 2 pieces of bucktail, even thinner than that white. This is really just to give it a little hint of color up here. It's not going to be overpowering at all, so let's just a couple wraps right there. Try to keep it situated on top. I think we're fine. That's close enough right there. I am going to lock it down with 1 more wrap before I snip it. Then I'll just catch in about a similar size piece of green. And again, the orange and green isn't much at all. It's just enough to give it a little hint of these colors right here. So let's go ahead and catch this one in. Same way we did the orange. Now I might have let that get too far forward on me. We'll see if that will come back to haunt me in a second, because I've got 1 more component to this wing, and it's just another tuft, but this time badger. And like the bucktail, you don't need that much of this, because this is a dark, and you know, it won't take much to give you a nice little black hint up here. And if you don't have badger, I don't know what a good substitute would be, but I'm guessing probably a squirrel. I think a squirrel would give you the same look right here, and probably similar motion through the water. So let's just catch that badger in right there, and enough wraps to secure it before we snip this front off. Okay, my head is getting a little bit big on me right there, but you know, we knew that was probably going to happen because we're tying in so many pieces up here. And I'm going to have to spend a few thread wraps just trying to smooth this little step down out right here. Okay, that's not a perfectly tapered head right there, but I think it's going to be close enough. And you could just finish it off right now and call it done. But if you've got some jungle cock eyes, yeah, go ahead and put them on. It's gonna set it off and give you the really nice, traditional, old school bucktail look. So I'm gonna catch a couple in right here. Okay, before I snip them, check and make sure they're about the same length. And in this case, they're pretty close. So a couple more wraps and snip the excess. Now just spend some time, several thread wraps, try to clean up your head here. Okay, let's whip finish it and see if we got any cleanup. Okay, I think we're all right. I kind of mangled up my throat right there, but we're gonna be fine. I think a drop of head cement and this guy's ready to go in my box. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Sam Slaymaker's Little Brook Trout. Y'all take care and we'll see you next time.